a big part of this process was the journal, and keeping a journal rather than having any verbal conversations. And as I looked back at this over the years, I'm amazed at what sort of things I went through this process with Phyllis, and things that we couldn't talk about, and questions I had or thoughts I had about, like for instance, Phyllis was talking about the first pass that we had, and I had been observing those surfaces for so long and not wanting to touch them because I felt they were so beautiful just by the way they were. And so I had a really hard time in the beginning thinking about covering the beauty and marking up that life that I thought of life because of the grain of the trees and the things that I had, the issues that I feel important around trees and anything. But anyway, so I had a long time before I could make any marks on those surfaces. And then some of the other things that came up in this journal for me when I've looked back is, and a question I've had for Phyllis is, was there anything that she had done during the process to try to communicate to me not to touch something or not to change something or to do something with something? And because, for instance, what I would do was use these squares. And generally, what I would do with these squares is to block things in that I thought were important or I thought I didn't want change in. So I don't know if that ever was communicated as she went through the process, but that's some of the things that are in my journal that I kept track of. And I tell you, having this process really caused me about midway to become very disciplined in having to come in to do the work and make decisions on what I was going to do, because I think Phyllis mentioned in the beginning or sometime that these weren't our works. It was a whole new piece between us. It wasn't my work, it wasn't her work, and so it was almost like this responsibility I had to come in and look at the work and make decisions on what I needed to do on each piece. It's just a different work ethic that I've had before, and so I thought that was really interesting, and I had forgotten about that until I looked back again in my journal. So I think the journals were really, really important. There's some things in here that probably don't belong in here that has nothing to do with the painting, but I think that's all part of the process too as we create, and at least for me, and our thoughts about things in the world or what's going on in our life. Or so anyway, that's all in here, as much as we were daring to write.
Well, Robbin just mentioned about the squares that she used, and gosh, I guess she even in a group meeting with someone else mentioned that she uses squares to mark off what she likes. I never got that. I never figured that out the whole time, which is, kind of a sad admission, because I think this whole thing was about having a conversation with each other in paint, conversation which had nothing to do with, our normal mode of verbal conversation. And it was one of the questions I had for her that I wanted to know, that I never could ask until just now, which is, why did you use red boxes? Why did you use those squares? And it was one of the things I found frustrating, actually, because I was working with soft edges and organic shapes, and then I would get a painting back from Robbin and would have this big red mark, this big huge square, or several squares, or marks, or handprints. I mean, there were handprints and big red heavy lines, and I could never, I finally thought, aha, she's creating a problem for me so that I get to grow and I get to figure out how to work with this problem. That's the closest I could get, and that was the positive light I could put on it. But it was one of the things I found frustrating, I guess is the word, or to be an exasperation in this process. But it's one of those exasperations you smile about, because again, you don't own the painting, so you just keep going.
Yeah.
This. Now, there's nothing, I mean, it's not that this one is better on some scale or something than this is, but it's just such a surprise. It's such a change that I had to keep reminding myself that that's what this was about. It was about surprise and change and letting go and taking risks and responding. So I don't even know what I did with this one, but let's look. So this is number 13, and in the 5th phase, it looked like that. So I guess I softened it and started adding or softening the lines or something. Then Robbin did this. So you know, so
Made it
we
all
moved
red.
all around the place, but, and shifted from, so that each of us was continuing to add something or take things away as we went along. And this piece just evolved. Here we go with handprints. This was another thing that was kind of something Robbin would add in that was always
And that was another symbol.
another symbol.
It was
Another
about
symbol.
community and
Yeah. Ah, it was about community. Well, you know, we worked together with this for 3 years, and I'm not sure that I ever got it.
well, I think it was fun. I had to learn the same thing. I had to learn about what in the hell is she doing? I had those same thoughts at times.
With
in
what?
the hell? Oh, I don't know. I'd have to look back at some of our images again, but there were times. Well, for instance, let's take the last one that you did it on.
The last
The
one I did
pink
it on?
one.
The pink one, yes.
The pink one. I'm like, what the hell? Anyway, but then I thought, you know what? At that point, I knew that was just the way it was. And that these pieces were about process and not about the actual outcome of the piece. And I think that's important to let people know, is
Yeah.
that these aren't about being finished pieces and beauties and, wonderful masterpieces. They're about the process of two artists coming together and working and risking and letting it go and seeing what happens. And I think actually if you look through all those photographs that'll be up, it's like there's some wonderful parts of them in the middle. We should have stopped, but we weren't ready.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I learned a lot from that, just letting it go as a process rather than this doesn't have to be a masterpiece.